All right,
I have to
so
leave in like an hour.
okay, I'll be quick then. So the three movies I saw were Saltburn, Amadeus, and Barry Lyndon. Saltburn, I didn't really like that much, just because I thought it was. I mean, I get what it was doing. It was kind of a bait and switch, I suppose. It started out as this. I sort of thought it would be like an artsy, like an art house movie or something, and then it sort of turned into this like really silly, I guess, slasher or something. It just felt like a big joke at the end. Like it was just like it's like, ah, we got you, fooled you or something. And so I just left disappointed. I thought it was gonna be, I don't know, like the idea of a guy like a gay romance at Oxford sounds very like novelistic or something, but the movie was just all about a guy getting a big house or something, which seems like a pretty vain. It's just not interesting. Amadeus was really great. Uh, a little long, and I can't really tell if I even like Mozart's music or like the myth of it. So I don't know. I mean, but it was beautiful. And then Barry Lyndon was amazing. Definitely my favorite. When I saw it before, for some reason I don't know. I liked it, but I thought it was kind of cynical. But now I just think that's all a function of its sort of its realism or something. I don't know. It's like it doesn't seem biased in any way. It just seems kind of obsessed with, I don't know. But it was great. I really like that one. I've been kind of obsessed with that theme, the song of Irish women or whatever from the soundtrack. I've just been listening to it nonstop. So the movie and like humming it. So the movie obviously made some like weird unconscious effect on me. And it's very rare, I think, comparatively. Although I guess all these movies sort of, Saltburn least of all, but at least Amadeus and Barry Lyndon are sort of set in roughly a similar century at least. And it's kind of an odd, like something I know, something I kept thinking when watching Barry Lyndon was like, this seems like such a gay time. Like I know it's not, but for some reason it
Hmm.
just seems extremely gay. Like the shoes and
Yeah.
the dueling and the twists and pirouettes, the strange the way they all had these like these fake moles and they powdered their faces and their wigs. I don't know if that's the thing. I'm kind of ignorant, so I don't really know if Kubrick was kind of making fun of that time, but my suspicion is that he was being like artistically accurate and trying to evoke the weirdness of that time through pure accuracy, which is quite like a refined move, if it's indeed true. But I just kept thinking that. But their boots and their breeches or whatever they are, the dialogue was just amazing. I mean, I don't know how they really talked back then, but I imagine that it at least gave the impression that everybody was talking like how they talked back then, which is always very gratifying.
I wanted to think that Thackeray wrote it sort of like how it was uh, portrayed. I
Yeah,
felt like, and when you're saying that like it's kind of a gay movie, I kind of
it's
agree,
not
kind of.
just the time period. I'm not saying like the movie is, just the time period seems like it.
The part that was like sort of gay was when he was arguing with like the kid and while they're studying in like the drawing room.
Now you
The,
see
the, the,
that part I thought was sort of the most universal. It reminded me of
okay.
in a way it reminded me of um Ishmael and Isaac
Isaac.
or whatever. Yeah. That weird
Okay.
like the like stepbrother rivalry that ends up being consequential in the larger story. Um Yeah, I mean, there's this constant dynamic in the movie as well, where like people are very like they're speaking in a high flown way, but it's only to conceal rather base intentions, and nowhere is that more like obvious than the robbers, like really well spoken robbers. Like
Right.
I really like that scene. It's just like I would love to oblige you, but in this line of work, like that was great. The movie's like fun. It's like so fun. There's like 11 scenes that are like just incredibly enjoyable. Not to mention it's like insanely beautiful. Like every frame of painting, you know. Truly in
Yeah,
this
oh, I'll
case.
say, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Kubrick for you. And the other
Mm.
thing is when something happens, it always happens so ambiently, like nothing ever really smacks you in the face.
Yeah.
It's all when he gets embroiled with the woman, the Lyndon lady, Lady
Yeah.
Lyndon.
Yeah.
She's like really like drop dead gorgeous, you know.
Yeah.
But then they just kind of like have her in the background a lot. Like she doesn't actually like sort of have any agency throughout the rest of the film, and you're
Mm.
kind of like, that's a pretty interesting decision in a story, is to have the story kind of be like a, that's her namesake, is the story.
Yeah.
It's the story's title is literally her namesake,
Yeah, it's her surname.
and she's the reason why like this the story is even a big deal, because they he gets wedded into the family,
Yeah.
and then but she's just kind of like a skeleton in the closet or something. Like she doesn't
Yeah.
really like have any role, or like I said, agency. And I thought that was like a very unusual and
Stylistically what? You just cut off.
stylistically anachronistic.
Well, I mean, I'd have to look at the original story. I mean, you mean like for the 70s or for I mean, in what sense?
No, I mean for
Mm.
the book, it's something that would made sense in the book, but in a movie it doesn't really make any sense.
Mm.
But Kubrick just sort of ran with it and made her a background character in her own kind of movie. Like she really should be more of a main character, I would think.
Yeah, you're right. She is sort of treated like a background character or like a sort of plot device or something. Like she's
And
very, yeah.
it slowed down the film in order to accommodate that, which
Mm.
also allowed for you to feel like the film was more true to life in a way, more like, as you said, more realistic,
Mm.
because the naturalism in Barry Lyndon is emblematic of that era, I would think.
Mm.
But like at the same time, the whole Augustan age in England, it was an age when like rags to riches stories were becoming a little bit more interesting
Mm.
to the literate society.
Yeah.
And this movie is a slow burn for sure. The book is as well, but
Yeah.
it's like it the author and Kubrick, the director in this film, wants you to see how close they are uh to sort of like piercing through the impossible, like ascension in society, and really piercing the boundaries of what's expected for an up and coming person.
Mm.
And the way they do that is by making it so god
So what? So
it's like
so
they're so passionate, and yet it's also so restrained and sort of slightly concealed. Like
yeah.
right before they have that fight in the
Yeah.
like the courtroom or wherever the room is,
It was
like
in
the
this like former church thing that had become a just a nest of pigeons and sort of a stables. I think if you're referring to the final fight between the
no,
stepson.
I'm not talking about the duel. I'm talking about there's a fight that breaks out. Actually, it's really
Oh
more
yeah, yeah,
pummeling. Yeah, he pummels him, and
yeah,
and that's like, that to me was like, they were spending all this time being restrained in that scene,
yeah.
and at the end of it, once the woman leaves, Lady Lyndon,
Yeah.
then Barry Lyndon decides to start beating the shit out of that guy. And
Doesn't she leave afterwards?
no,
Maybe
she
not.
leaves like, no, because he insults her, and so she walks out.
Oh yeah, and then he gets pissed off and starts beating his ass. Yeah, I
Yeah,
kind of
and
remember. Yeah.
then yeah, and for me that was like, it kind of typified the whole film, where it's like they don't really say what they mean, and then once they do, it's like shit hits the fan, you
Yeah.
know. And that's always like the litmus for whether or not the scene is going to blow up is if they actually speak their mind for once.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, but it's hard for me to tell whether that's like, I mean, when I first
Very
saw the movie,
restrained drama. Yeah.
I had this sense that that was Kubrick's like ironic, sort of cynical critique of the age, that like there's all this fanciful language, but underneath it, there's just the old rivalries. But I kind of that's I mean that's probably a fair depiction. It's just a different way of living is like, going balls to the wall or just like this empty sort of cream puff
Right.
like poetry. Like that's just a way to be, and that's probably what those times were in fact like. I mean, I think it's you were saying it was depicted by that ass being, and I would say the duels are like always like a great example of this weird mixture between like refinement and civility, but also kind of like excessive
Right.
intensity and like like oh like they read out the rules, but you're basically just like you're just like killing someone. It's this interesting combo. I mean,
Etiquette
yeah.
for the courtier meant
Yeah.
everything because it gave you survival. If you could just forestall a conflict erupting
Hmm.
by like taking way too long to say what you mean to say, if
Yeah.
you can do that, you can blow it out as like a whole paragraph when you could have said it in a sentence. If you can
Well,
do
you're
that
not
a lot,
failing. Yeah.
then you'll sort of thrive in
You'll
a
stay afloat. Hmm.
you'll stay afloat, right, in a floaty environment such as that
Yeah.
cream puff world you're talking about, and with all the wigs and the makeup, and they're all trying to look like dandies, right? They're all trying to look like what they're not. They're trying to look like
Hmm.
they're
Yeah.
more civilized and dignified than they really are,
Yeah.
and I think it was because this was not the most populated time in human history,
Hmm.
and so to see a person the technology was so advanced that seeing a person meant more because than it did in previous centuries because it meant that they had an understanding of these enlightenment scientific theories, and they could use certain tools of the trades for all these different exploration jobs. Like people were kind of more enlightened on average, but there was also less people. So seeing a person was like seeing a bird of paradise or something, like a
Wow.
swan.
It's very
And so they,
interesting.
they tried to dross it up by having all these little outfits and like these wavy, robes and stuff, and corsets and
Yeah, it's like this
things that
this
would puff out
ostentation
their
which
body.
strikes us
The
as
ostentation,
completely
right?
ridiculous, but it does seem
But it
rather
was because
appropriate.
they
Yeah.
are higher minded, but and loftier in their sentiments, but also like you're saying, like floaty and pretentious. And I think Barry Lyndon it's a film about a man's sort of rise and then downfall,
Yeah,
but it's
definitely.
also it's also a film about um the role, like punishment,
Hmm.
like redemption not really taking like you I saw Miserable. I
Hmm.
saw two versions.
Hmm.
And that's a film very much about redemption. And
Hmm.
Barry Lyndon is precisely the opposite. It's about a man who's pretending to like find his redemption, and then he ends up shooting himself in the foot and losing everything. And
Yeah.
at the end duel, when he literally lets the guy live out
Yeah,
of
because
and then he ends up
he wins. He would have won because he's like the ultimate, badass fighter. But yeah, I know what you mean. He has mercy on this upstart stepson, but it's like too late or something.
yeah, it's too late. He ends up also losing the wife, and he ends up being destitute.
Just a second here. I think we just had a little network interruption. Uh, hey, are you there? Sorry. Damn. All right, give me a second here.
Fundamentally not cream filled and lofty like Barry Lyndon, but it's actually a gritty story about the impoverished and their relationship to
Hmm.
um, the economy and the
Hmm.
legal system, and how the criminal justice system in France and outside Paris or in Paris was just like vicious, and still probably is, about people because it's not designed to have empathy.
Hmm.
But these people are looking for redemption, and they're seeking their own punishments in order to sort of fast track redemption, right? They're castigating themselves. what's penitential to themselves,
Hmm.
and it's a film where it's like your the a character's relationship to God, it means more than their relationship to their society. But Barry Lyndon is like the inside out, and Barry Lyndon, God is like a second thought, and
Yeah.
everything in there is about society.
Yeah.
And then, of
Social
course, when
status.
you're social stats, but when he fails to sustain this amazing life that he's sort of stolen for himself,
Yeah.
it reminds you that at the end of the day, God is the one who decides whether or not fortune is meant for you, and
Well,
in your legacy,
it's
right, in
sort
the
of
long run.
it's under the like deistic euphemism of fate, but yeah, there are scenes in that movie
It-
where I mean, like 5 times I think the narration is like, but as fate often, and then finally his downfall is, it's this really heartbreaking scene where he's like playing with his son, and it's like, but fate would see that Barry Lyndon would have no descendants or something, and I didn't
Yeah,
really,
they call it fate because they don't want to talk about God, so they use deism as a sort of like a counterfeit religion, and
hmm.
it works for the story because in that world, people wouldn't be speaking about
No,
God. They
they
would
would
have been,
speak of fate, yeah, just as, providence or whatever.
yeah, they're too enlightened and philosophical and airy fairy to actually indulge more concrete religious ideas. Now, you're saying you're talking about deism, that's talking about philosophy.
Mm,
What this exact situation in Barry Lyndon, where he's feverishly pursuing this situation but never really lands it. That reminds me of a philosopher that you were telling me about, who's I believe German in Providence, and lived in the early and mid 20th century. And I forget his exact name and his exact doctrine, but he believes something that you told me about before, where socialism kind of fails. I mean, not that this movie is about socialism; if anything, it's all capitalism. But
yeah.
socialism sort of fails because it's obsessed with itself and it can never really see beyond and around, and so no one ever becomes truly socialist in a society because they can never see beyond socialism.
Hmm. I don't really know. That doesn't really ring a bell. I mean, there's a philosopher, he's Italian, Augusto Del Noce, who critiques, not really socialism, but Marxism and sort
It was
of,
Italian.
I'm just trying, because what you're saying doesn't really ring a bell. So I'm just trying to think of like a critic of, I
What's
mean,
his criticism? Augusto Del Noce.
well, I think his criticism, if I remember correctly, is that Marxism, it's like it either denies the universality of reason, in that if you disagree with Marxism, you're just, you're just motivated by material interests or whatever. But more than that, the greater error is this denial of original sin, basically. If there's no original sin, then human beings are essentially perfectible, and to affect that perfection, you can just, the ends justify the means or something.
And right, and this ties in wonderfully to Barry Lyndon's personality. I think he did view himself as perfectible, and yet he ultimately we find and we see really the whole time that he's kind of a piece of shit, and he
Yeah,
has a lot
he
of
is.
sympathetic virtue, despite it all. But he's
Hmm.
not a character that we really want to be like.
No. No, he's. I mean, in the movie they say as well. The qualities which allow you to gain a huge fortune are often those which lead you to squander it or destroy it or whatever. And that kind of seems like that's who he is. He's like this uncontrolled character of just uncontrollable intensity, and that gets him everything, but that causes him to lose
I
everything
mean, he
too.
literally starts out the movie by getting in a duel for practically no reason.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that the tart that he is obsessed with is just like, you know, not not worth. And it's so, I mean, I know he has the quote justification of true love or whatever, but it's as that sort of kindly like avuncular, like fat redcoat who's like always on his side. It's as that guy says, like it's no, that's no grateful gesture in return for the guy's actual uncle being nice to him, to like try to fuck up this relationship between the redcoat and the tart. Sorry, that's like a complicated sentence, but the point is like he that was like an asshole thing to do because he was basically blocking money going to his uncle for the sake of this stupid adolescent fling. And he is a young person, but like, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, and he fucked up his whole military career too,
hmm,
and He really was a
Desertion, yeah.
misfit. He really was a misfit. But that's but I think the film is a wonderful and honestly the book George Makepeace Thackeray. So it's a really tried and true exploration on the limitations of pretense, right? Don't you think?
Hmm. Um,
Ostentation and pretense having just like a stark limit that somehow God just intervenes and it's inflicts
and what? Sorry, you just.
with the human world. You can only meddle with the human world so much, and
Hmm.
eventually, if you don't have a good relationship with the divine, with the spirit, with the heart, and even the
Hmm.
body, if you don't have a good relationship with those elements, then you're not gonna survive and thrive
Hmm.
as a personality in the world in society.
Yeah, I sort of wondered about that, whether it was sort of whether it had that moral arc. I suppose it does. I mean, as often happens, it's sort of like, I think you see this in drama sometimes. The moment where someone reforms and changes their ways is precisely like it just that lines up with the moment of their punishment. So him having mercy on his stepson in a way is him not being so uncompromising, but that's precisely when he gets punished.
Absolutely, and so let's move on. I think we've belabored it a little. Great
Sure.
film.
Yeah. I don't know if
Kubrick.
it's a
One
great
thing I
place to
say
put
about
it, but
Kubrick. One thing I say about Kubrick is that unlike some directors, Nolan or Villeneuve, Kubrick's movies get better as his career went on.
hmm,
I think some directors like Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve, who just I'm seeing Dune later tonight, the
yeah.
second one. I just saw the first one in theaters,
Huh.
so because they gave like they
Yeah.
re-released it or
Reprise,
whatever.
just so you can
They reprised
get
it for
caught
like
up. Yeah.
a week or so, and so I saw that in theaters, which I'd never seen it. I avoided it because I like the David Lynch one, and so
Hmm.
here's a little intermission, I guess.
Yeah.
And this Dune I'm now going to see, and it's Denis Villeneuve, and I'm not excited because I've looked at
Yeah.
his filmography, and it seems like his films get worse the more he makes them,
Hmm.
and it's the same with Christopher Nolan. I hate to say it, but
Yeah.
Kubrick is precisely the opposite. Every film that Kubrick made got better the
Hmm.
more he made them,
Hmm.
starting with Killers, Lolita, Spartacus, all the way into 2001, Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, and then eventually he makes Full Metal Jacket and Eyes Wide Shut. I just think the movies got better the more he
Yeah.
he became like a true maestro in that sense.
Well, maybe
Um,
that's the difference between an auteur and you know, a journeyman or whatever. That the former becomes more like
Correct.
themselves, and the latter just compromises themselves or something.
Sells out, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of someone who is also quite a filmic master, although maybe not
Maybe not what?
directed a great film, won a ton of awards in the 1984, I believe.
Yeah.
Amadeus, right? A
Hmm.
much beloved picture, and one of my favorite actors ever is the plays Salieri, Antonio Salieri, who's sort of like this opponent to Mozart,
Yeah.
and he actually won the Academy Award for his role.
Hmm.
What did you think of Amadeus?
I thought it was like I just thought it was great. It was one of those like just amazing. I mean, it sounds weird, but like I was watching with someone who was kind of distracting me from it. But I yeah, it was like really good, and I really relate to that kind of everything. I mean, Salieri's frustration, his like weird antagonism with God or whatever. It's all very just epic themes, and but
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean Salieri is he's an obsessive like Barry Lyndon, and he's also sort of out for his own crackpot justice.
yeah.
And I think looking into the archive and whatnot, he's not the worst composer. The
Mm,
film sets him up to be literally like a dog shit composer. But he's really just a derivative one
mm.
at times. And actually, in his own biography, I believe he was a tutor to Mozart.
Huh.
So it's not like he had no worth. And the film does kind of explore his value somewhat,
Yeah.
but they also sort of lambaste him as just sort of like, like a charlatan or a fraud or mountebank or what have you.
Mm,
And, I always felt like Mozart's music really transcends his era, but
mm,
Salieri's unfortunately does not transcend his era.
mm.
And
Yeah.
so that is precisely why he's not as a household name. But the film, do you think it did justice to Mozart, or do you think it kind of
It it kind of what? You cut out a little bit.
puffed him up too much and made him a wig rather than a head of hair?
Oh, that's that's an interesting analogy. I mean, the weird thing is as stupid as it sounds, sometimes I don't really get classical music. I mean, I've had times where I understand Beethoven or at least I enjoy it, but so I don't I can only really see this movie as like this sort of myth of a genuine artist versus someone who wants to be an artist or something, or like someone who's mediocre versus someone who's genuinely talented. And that is certainly a like interesting myth because I think in a strange way that applies not just to artistic talent but to happiness and to grace. I mean, I think all three of those axes are kind of like it may sound fatalistic, but I think that's kind of the message of the movie that you can try really hard, but you're not going to deviate beyond. Like you can't have superbio pride. You can't elevate yourself beyond your actual station. It's just going to make your downfall that much more tragic. So
Yeah, I
so
mean, yeah. So what are you saying?
but sorry. With respect to Mozart, like I think I don't know what he was really like, but the myth of him is this like carefree, vital, like genius savant. I mean,
sort
if
of vivacious, right?
yeah, yeah, like Dionysus almost. Like there's
Yeah,
no
Dionysian. It has a sort of
yeah.
puerile sensibility.
Yeah, so I don't know what he was really like, but if he was different than that, the movie must have only been praising him beyond what he actually was, you know? I
No,
I I
I
I
mean,
can't see it as insulting him at all.
I would say that there are aspects to his letters very much in keeping with the film,
Yeah.
or this, I should say, the film is very much in keeping with the persona from the letters. He wrote like erotic letters a lot, and he would write compositions that were like humorous in intention. They had no real like
Scatological, perhaps.
yes, yeah, exactly, scatological. And I felt like the film probably could have drossed it up more. I mean, they could have made
Hmm.
him appear to be like a libertine, and he ended up being a little bit more of a family values persona,
Well,
in the end.
yeah, and that was something that was kind of funny that he almost if the movie had a shortcoming, I guess, it was that Mozart often sort of anachronistically seems like this like down home. He almost sounds like Mark Hamill. Like he sounds like Luke Skywalker. Like his voice and his manner of acting has this like sort of pluckiness about him. But the thing where like he just doesn't have an English accent where everyone else does is just a bit silly. Um, if I'm remembering that right. But
Oh, yeah, that was charming. I felt like it was
oh yeah,
charming.
well that's the thing. Like
Um,
I can't I'm not gonna say it's an actual fault. It's just something I sort of noticed and it's more of a pedantic
well, how about
criticism, but it
this?
does
I mean,
contribute
didn't you
to the
find it
message. Yeah.
funny Didn't you find it funny how self-important Salieri was, whereas, Mozart was just trying to have, like, a good time, you know? And, like,
Yeah.
Salieri talks about how he wants to be a great composer, fart jokes,
Well, that's the thing. That's
and, like,
yeah.
playing with his girlfriend's titties and stuff, like, he wasn't he had no pomposity at all. Like, you'd think that Mozart would be the most pompous individual on planet Earth.
Yeah,
He was, like, the
totally.
least pompous, and no one even seemed to mind.
Well, that I mean, I think that's like the bottom line of the movie or something. Like that is the main point of the movie that if you've actually got talent or if you're actually meant for something,
Yeah?
you
You
don't
cut
even
out.
oh,
You're cutting
sorry.
out.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, what I was saying was that like I think the point of the movie, which is a very like interesting, profound point, is that if you're meant for something, if you're predestined to happiness or grace or artistic talent, it's like so much a part of you that you don't even really realize you have it. So you don't really like of course you try and you apply yourself, but like true talent almost doesn't really realize that it's talented, and mediocrity by contrast makes so much out of the little that it
Will, you're
does have.
cutting out. Will, you're cutting out. Say it. Say it again. Flick.
Um, okay, it's just basically basically I think the message of the movie is that talent is like that, you know.
Like what? Oh, it's not self-concerned.
Yeah, and in fact it's probably that way because it doesn't even know that it is talent, you know.
Well, I also feel like with Mozart, he was avoiding his father in his life, it seems. Like his father
Yeah,
was a very self-serious and dour, stern man,
yeah.
and Mozart was a little like he was dainty and sumptuous and sort of carefree. And I think at the end, his father passes away, and he Mozart begins to write these requiem mass, and to me, that's like a turning point where he becomes obsessed with his own father's sort of
Hmm.
uh, melancholia, and he ends up kind of over embracing it and becoming hyper melancholic himself, and that's what leads to his sort of drunken withdrawal from society, his drunken,
Hmm.
you know, falling out with his own health and his own body function, and he became kind of a wretched version of himself.
Hmm.
Salieri, of course, is sort of watching this happen in real
Yeah.
time,
And in a way,
and
he's good at
Salieri
making
is
it
kind of
happen.
is kind of
Yeah.
getting off on it, isn't he?
Well, he's part of it, isn't he? Because he has this like he's hiring Mozart to do something, and then he's simultaneously transcribing the music. I mean, in a way, he's pressing on his downfall.
Well, he's trying to profit off of it, but I don't think he in the film at least he didn't consciously manufacture it.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe it wasn't that radical. I don't really remember honestly.
Salieri accuses himself of murdering Mozart, but it's part of the same irony, which is that he never could do anything right. He didn't kill Mozart. Mozart killed himself, but Salieri thinks he killed Mozart because Salieri thinks he made everything
Yeah.
that makes the world go round.
That's great. Yeah.
Mozart just wanted to, write something that his dad would approve of, but
Yeah.
he went too far with it. I mean, that's the way the story's told. In real life, I have no idea. He obviously had a family that did not really, profit off his death, and then the fact of the matter is that he died in obscurity. They threw his body into a mass grave.
Mm, yeah.
He had no money. I mean, the same is true of Antonio Vivaldi. Another great composer, and they literally threw him into a grave. Like
Jeez.
he, or I don't know if they threw him into a grave, but he did die poor. And it's just a lot of composers, they aren't really associated with wealth. And but for whatever reason, Salieri was rich, right? And that tells you something about him. Like, we're talking about sellouts, like in
Yeah.
filmmaking and stuff. Like Salieri is this, in his own day, he was a highly regarded, widely known court composer.
Mm,
So I just don't think the film is about anything less than the travail of kind of the talented versus the sort of the pompous and vindictive, who mock the talented in their
yeah.
walk of life.
Yeah, certainly, and that's quite a fitting dramatic theme.
And
Or
you didn't like the music, though. I thought the music was so good, and I think there's a lot of operas that Mozart worked on that are a little hard to understand why they're written the way they are,
mm,
why they sound the way they do. But by and large, the music is pretty melodic as far as classical music goes, and that is the era of classical music. Like, there's the
of
romantic period
course,
with beginning with Beethoven,
it's like the
and
best
then
of the
there's
best.
impressionistic, and then there's modern, and before that, Baroque and Renaissance, and even earlier music that's considered Western. But this was a high point of all of it. This was classical
Yeah,
as a
absolutely.
subgenre of classical.
Yeah.
Was the epitome of that. But yeah, so moving on, I think what other flicks did we get through? We saw
Now,
Saltburn.
yeah, we both saw
Saltburn is
Saltburn.
Saltburn is very much like Amadeus, don't you think?
Yeah. Here, just give me a second. Excuse me. I'm gonna pause this. I'll tell you when I unpause it. Excuse me. Pause. Yeah.
Saltburn is almost like the same movie. It's almost like they're cribbing notes.
Well,
Um,
I don't. I mean, it's a pale imitation, if anything. I mean, my
yeah, but
you know,
no, no, a pale imitation. I mean, I think it's sort of a blatant imitation.
hmm.
You don't see
Well,
those
who's I
films
mean,
as
who's
having.
Mozart and who's Salieri? I guess. I guess Salieri is the protagonist, the weird little Harry Potter
Yeah, no,
guy
I think
who's
so, and I think the rich kid,
yeah,
the Saltburn estate,
the scion. Yeah,
benefactee.
yeah,
Right, no, the scion, exactly. The benefactee to the Saltburn estate.
yeah.
That is going to be Mozart, which I think is preposterous. But if you consider how vapid our society is now and how thinly spread the culture is,
Hmm.
I think you can make the argument that just some really rich fuck is kind of like the Mozart of our time
In the
because
sense that he
because
is the best
the
person, kind
affluence is
of.
kind of the new. This is kind of almost like the new art form now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's, yeah. I mean, because the guy, for all his affluence, is nevertheless somehow, I don't know, he's somehow,
Hollow and self-critical,
well,
despite
no,
the
no, I'd say
appearance.
the opposite. I'd say he has some kind of, there's something positive to him. It's hard to put your finger on what it is, besides that he's like sexy or something, but at least in the universe of the movie. But
Well, it's the same movie. Like they start out by talking about how much pussy he gets. They're like, this dude gets laid. That's kind of how they like set him up as a character. Like all the girls like him. It was the exact same thing in Amadeus, and the whole time Saltburn is like obsessed with him. Like there's not a lot of movies where you have the main character be this obsessee who
yeah,
just sort of
that's true.
stalks his prey the whole time and eventually kind of wins. There's
Yeah.
not a lot there's not a lot of movies like that, so I
Yeah,
would
you're
say
right. Like the most basic structure is really sort of uncannily similar. It must represent some kind of, I don't know, shared phenomenon or the same
and I
phenomenon
and I I
somehow.
I think that, the culture is being as spread thin as it is nowadays, with all the technology doing the better part of the work anyway, I would say that really, like, artistic merit is, like, losing less and less of its kind of it
Cachet.
its,
Well,
cachet. I was gonna say
I wouldn't go
currency. I was
that
gonna say
far.
currency.
I'd say it's, you would say earnestness.
I would say it's losing its currency
Oh,
in the modern
currency.
landscape, economic and social landscape. I think
I
it's
just don't think there's
now
enough of it.
just
Yeah.
representing. Listen, just representing success is the new success.
Yeah, I mean, for good or ill, that is the weird, like, I
And
mean, that's
this
the,
scion
yeah.
of the Saltburn of family or whatever, I forget if they had what their title was, but they're the scion of this impressive family from England. And the whole time it's all English jokes and English cultural jabs, and this Scion character, the young Saltburn, he is kind of the benefactee to a really entrenched, system that allows people to, I say system, but an entrenched cultural,
Order.
machine
Yeah.
that gives the best crème de la crème milk to, uh, the people that kind of have put in the least effort, and it
Yeah.
rewards, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. It rewards those who are already set up to be rewarded, and this Scion, I forget his actual name, like, what was his name, the
I don't
character's
remember
name?
either.
Yeah,
It's
but,
been a minute.
he's, like, handsome, and he goes to Oxford, but he's, like, he's a legacy at Oxford, he's not
Yeah.
probably doesn't have the grades for it, and he all his friends just wanna have sex with him because they think he's, like, represents some dream, and then he's all and his whole life is, like, drug fueled. His parents, like, have weird interactions with him because they can't relate on anything,
Yeah.
as just how rich people are, I guess.
Yeah.
I
That's
feel
funny.
like I feel like the only one who was really authentically normal was the dad, which is kinda weird because and maybe that's supposed to be Emperor Joseph in Amadeus. The
Oh,
dad
yeah, no,
character is
they're similar. They're this kind of detached authority figure who in both cases are sort of silly,
yeah.
and that is an
Like, when
interesting
he's looking at
commonality. Yeah.
the plates, and he's like, "You know these expensive plates? These antiques?" And he's like,
Yeah.
"Yes, of course I do. I'm a big fan of this artist," or whatever. It's like some
Yeah.
Dutch porcelain artist, and then they find out that he was just reading through the book on their house that was
Mm,
out in the world, that you could buy a book on the Saltburn estate,
mm,
and that book details these plates that they have in their possession, and they acted like that was never even in the realm of possibility, but of course it was, because they're that filthy rich.
mm,
Their house is literally like a living museum,
hmm.
and that no one can go to unless they go arrange a tour, I suppose. But
That's funny. Yeah.
and that is part of the artist, that majesty that has been set up, and it only really exists in these like landed aristocrat settings.
Mm,
That modern day majesty is exactly the majesty you find in Amadeus. I mean, and to be fair, in Amadeus, he was, a guest to the Emperor of Austria. So it
yeah.
wasn't like he was, living beside royalty. I mean, without royalty, he was living right beside it. But like in this, the same people living beside royalty have no real reason to be a part of it, and it's a very critical um, work
Mm.
on contemporary society. Whereas Amadeus, I think, had some optimism. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, Amadeus. Well, I mean, Saltburn is much more degenerate in general, sort of. But yeah, I mean, I agree. There was no real sustained critique of the aristocracy in Amadeus. If anything, there's kind of the implied praise of it, in that
They lionize it, right? They
because in a
praise
way,
they
it's like, yeah, this man is silly, but he is supporting Mozart. In his sort of. I mean, to some extent, Mozart is
Emperor
suppressed by
Joseph,
the censorship, and he's not able to do the stuff he wants. But like,
right?
it's not a dire, fucked up situation. It's just like it's something that he gets around. But
The Emperor
overall, yeah.
Joseph was known for his liberal attitudes, and in fact, a lot of his policies were overturned after his death because they were just economically not sustainable.
Hmm.
He gave so much away to the poor,
Wow.
and he was considered a very relatable emperor. Like, if that makes any sense to you, if it rings any bells,
Well,
like, he was kind of like an emperor without clothes. Like, he would let poor people sort of interact with him, and common people talk to
hmm.
him on, like, on the street and things like that. He was trying to be like kind of Christ-like, and it
Wow.
drained the coffers for the entire exchequer. But it was,
That's funny.
something worth doing, I suppose, back in the Enlightenment,
Yeah.
to make a
Well,
point out of
so
your existence.
sort of something I noticed about both Barry Lyndon and Amadeus, I guess, and
But
commonalities, etc.
Saltburn,
Yeah.
the senior Saltburn does the same thing by letting the young protagonists, hang around for so long.
Yeah, he does. He does kind of want to be like a man of the people in this kind of
Right.
degraded
Yeah, this like forced
democratic
generosity
sense.
that
Yeah.
takes you by surprise. And what are you
Yeah.
saying about Barry Lyndon?
Well, I just a little thing I noticed about Barry Lyndon and Amadeus is that in both movies, royalty still exists, and it sort of is intensely associated with respect and honor, but kings don't wear crowns, they don't have any special dress, but they're undoubtedly kings nonetheless. It's just like an interesting transitional period in history or something, I suppose. I mean, I think you only see the king in one scene, but
Right.
I mean, Barry Lyndon is like the movie is all about title and these sort of ancient feudal institutions that still hold intense currency. And you could
Well,
say in the same
Was
way
it
that
King George? Was it King George the Third?
I think so, because they were talking about, Barry Lyndon was
Keep in
he
mind,
yeah.
King George the Third was like considered crazy. So, like, he was just desperately uh insane, because he
Yeah.
had no he had a limited authority, crown authority. And so you're saying that everyone's treated as an equal, but it does have psychological
Well,
ramifications.
I'm not saying they're treated as an
I would
equal.
impute
I'm
it. Yeah.
saying that despite their appearance as equals, there's no real manner of dress that distinguishes the royalty that I could tell. Um, the whole like feudal dynamics of power are still very much in effect. I mean, you could say that's true of these days, but obviously to a much lesser degree. But it's the same
Well,
thing with Saltburn, that everybody pretends they sort of try on the surface to be these relatable citizens, like democratic equals, but in fact they're not. They're just, yeah.
yeah, I mean, the the crass reality is that, in this time of enlightened despotism, the monarchs in Europe would often, like, deign to be like a bourgeois member of society, and that kind of implied that they were on the way out. and they sort of knew it.
Yeah.
But it also underscored the fact that they could kind of play games with people
Well,
and
I mean,
and
Saltburn is
sort of
all
fuck
about
with their
those games,
heads.
isn't it? It's about the sort of
And of course, in Saltburn's
yeah.
case, like you're saying, this unstable transitory period,
Yeah.
Saltburn excelled at playing those games. He was a liar and a pathological one.
Well, wait,
And
you mean the protagonist?
sorry, yeah, not Saltburn, the protagonist. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He learned how to work the system and sort of smooths his way to the top.
A
And
bit like Barry Lyndon. Although,
and it becomes more and more realistic over the centuries to do that without
so
status. But I think it is important that he was also an Oxford student because that doesn't mean nothing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess that's the thing. I just didn't like the movie because I think there's something very silly about.
No, I think the movie was good. It's just the ending was a betrayal to us,
Well,
the
yeah.
viewers.
I mean, because like I said, I expected this to be. It sounds silly, but like, there's a certain pedigree of artistic movies which is kind of based off a similar genre of novels where nothing really happens, but the people are also sensitive and pretentious and intellectual that it's as if everything happens. I mean, like it's like. I mean, I feel like great literature is always like that. Like, not that much actually happens, but nevertheless, people are so neurotic that it's kind of fascinating nonetheless. But then this movie just kind of starts like that, and then it devolves into this like ridiculous like comedy slasher horror film or something, and it's just a lowering of tone.
Yeah, I couldn't find out
So
that he was. Where in the ending you find out, spoiler alert, that he was manufacturing everyone's downfall and really their death,
yeah,
and he kind of killed everyone
because
in
he
the
wanted a
family.
big house, he wanted to dance around
Ye-
naked in a big house. Like that is so stupid. Like that's like fuck, man. Like even even
See, you
a
know where I
gay
thought it was gonna
romance
go. You
is
know
more
where I thought it
interesting.
was gonna go. Do you
Where
want? I think a better movie would have been made if it went this way.
yeah
You know how he was invited back to hang out by the mom after the husband dies,
yeah.
and I thought it would turn into him becoming like the paramour, and him inheriting it because he was like the boyfriend.
So
Because
I mean, so it's kind of like if I'm getting what you're saying,
Rosamund Pike is a good-looking woman even now. Like it's
yeah.
not unbelievable that he would be attracted to her.
Well, the thing is, like, a bit of the movie is this guy's like semi-gay obsession to be like just like, well, I mean, explicitly gay obsession to be just like the Saltburn scion. So perhaps if he had really sort of completed that integration and then fall in love with the mom, it would be like really, I don't know, yeah, that would
I
have been
also
more
thought he would
interesting.
he would he would fall in love with maybe the sister, but like you're saying, she was kind of wicked, and
I
and
don't know.
he was kind of a gay kind of personality anyway.
Yeah, she was less bad than I don't know
I mean,
actually.
there
Yeah,
was there is some charm to her wickedness to some extent.
she wasn't
Um,
that bad. Neither her nor the
and to a
Saltburn
lesser
main
to a
guy.
lesser degree,
She
the
was a
the
little bit
mother.
worse than the main guy because he was really just like a natural sort of free spirit, kind of or something.
No,
I
I
wouldn't
think
go
the
that
main
far, but
guy. See, this is why the movie exactly. This is why the movie doesn't work for me. Is the main guy was the worst among them. I think the only one who was worse than him was like the American friend,
oh
uh,
yeah, no, he was just an asshole.
Farley.
But the dumb thing is like Farley or whatever. Like I started to realize the movie was like silly when Farley was like being this like basically like a gay bitch, like in the sense of like, oh, you
Right.
really think you can step up to the plate? Like that's like comedic. That's not dramatic. That's just
Was
silly.
he gay? I never understood.
Well, I
It
mean,
seemed like
in the sense of the British aristocracy, they were all pretty much bisexual, but with an emphasis
right.
on the gayness
That
or
it kind of
something.
seemed like they pretended to be gay as an affectation,
Well,
as an elitist sort of confusion.
yeah, I
The
don't know. I
in-group
mean,
behavior.
not
I
that
didn't
there's
it didn't
anything
seem like they were
inherently frivolous about it,
sincerely
but
homosexual, right?
yeah, no, you're right. It was almost it was a strange like Yeah, you're right. In a strange way, it's almost subordinate to the power struggle in this fucked up boarding school-esque way or something.
Yeah, I think the elite, it was. I think it was supposed to sort of elude expectation. It made them kind of gay seeming. It makes you think that they are like the Amadeus crowd with the buffoonery and the effeminate behavior. But in the Amadeus crowd, well, they didn't pretend to be gay. They just dressed like they were gay, you know. Whereas
Well,
in this, they
yeah.
dress like they're square and typical and contemporary, but then they actually act pretty gay.
Those are the transformations of history, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah, right. It just gets narrower and narrower and narrower, and behavior sort of distills in different ways. Uh,
Uh, yeah.
so okay, what's next? I asked you to
Those are the only
watch
ones I
Rob
watched.
Roy.
I didn't
I
watch
asked
that
you to
one.
watch. You didn't watch Rob Roy. I asked you to watch
Count of Monte Cristo.
The Count of Monte Cristo. That was another one. Yeah, I think I asked you to watch like 8 movies. To be honest with
Mm.
you. I what was one I also saw that I should mention? There was one called The Draftsman's Contract, and you'll like this one. You didn't
Huh.
see it, but I know you. I know knowing you, you'll like it.
Huh.
And it was about a man that was invited. It was made in like 1980. Before this is probably the earliest one on. No, it was kind of around Barry Lyndon, in between Amadeus and Barry Lyndon, and it takes place in like I think the 1600s,
Huh.
and it's at an aristocrat manor,
Yeah.
and there's a man invited there to just draw the gardens like a gentleman,
Hmm. That's
and
interesting.
he and they all wear it's very well made, like they all have the proper costumes and
Yeah.
accoutrement for the time,
Yeah.
but they're kind of hosting this guy who he has to spend all this time there. The problem, the stories it gets problematic when he decides that he can't just sketch the gardens and be done with it. He
Yeah.
has to like do do it over months
Huh.
because he needs to get the right lighting, and that means he can only draw at like certain hours of the day.
That is fucking bizarre, dude. What?
And so he ends up being kind of this like bugbear it sort of humiliates his family, and of course he ends up sleeping around with the
Yeah.
women. I thought this movie was really good. It's a lot like Saltburn, but kind of better, and a little like Amadeus too.
It's got
Same,
such a bizarre conceit. I'm like fascinated. I'm gonna watch it tonight.
yeah. Peter Greenaway was the director, and I actually was at the Venice Film Festival when they did a re-screening, and he was in the audience, and everyone gave him a standing ovation.
Hmm.
And anyway, he it's a good movie, and they don't like that he's just drawing like at 10 a.m. every fucking day, and he's really fearsome with about his approach. Like he's like, I have to get the angles right, the lighting has to be perfection, and they're all
Hmm.
kind of like, the English never really had a great painter. So
Let's keep it
maybe
that
you're
way.
not as good at art as you think you are. Like they're literally like,
That's hella
tired of his
funny.
shit. Because one of the
Yeah.
characters is German, right? I didn't mention that.
Yeah.
And the German guy argues with him like he's like, well, you're spending a lot of time drawing, but I'm German. We have a lot of great painters. English don't really have any.
That's funny.
And it's just a good line, and I think the film you'll enjoy it. I think it's a yeah. I won't spoil too much.
Yeah.
The other one is Rob Roy. Rob Roy has Liam Neeson,
Hmm.
like Les Mis,
Nice.
because in the '90s Les Mis, or was it '90s? There was a '90s one. There was a Les Mis, but unlike that, Rob Roy is more like Braveheart. Yet it takes place in like the 1700s,
Hmm.
and Rob Roy was a real person who had to like who was like a minor dignitary or nobleman, and not dignitary, but he was a minor nobility type of dude, and change up the tax policies and whatnot. So he goes to war, and it culminates in a duel at the end, kind of like Barry Lyndon. But the duel is really
Hmm.
fearsome, and the duel is all about his wife kind of being violated and
Damn.
raped by this dandy, and Tim Roth plays this dandy who looks like he has all the wig and makeup, and he looks like a buffoon, and he looks like
Sorry, last word I heard was buffoon.
in a tussle, he's really shrewd, and he knows how to fence.
Hmm.
And the ending of the movie, I imagine you won't see this film because it's kind of a drag. At the ending of the movie, he that's the duel. This guy who rapes his wife, this Dandy Lord,
Yeah.
and that dude Tim Roth is winning the duel against Liam Neeson, who's very tall. You know, he's like
Yeah.
6'4",
Yeah.
and Liam Neeson's losing his shit trying to win this duel, like it's almost like against Darth Maul or something. And he almost, and then Tim Roth insults his wife before he like does the finishing blow, and so
Uh,
Liam Neeson gets furious and just grabs the sword as he's trying to slash him, and it cuts up his hand, and then like forces the sword downward, and then gets his Scottish broadsword and fucking cuts off the shoulder of
nice.
Tim Roth.
Sounds extremely cathartic.
And yeah, right. And he just uses raw strength to just fucking chop him up.
Nice.
But he was losing the whole duel. Like the guy was toying with him,
Yeah.
and he just kind of tricked him at the end. Um, so yeah,
Hmm.
it's a film kind of about the dynamic between, like in Saltburn, like you have this sort of like this sort of bourgeois kind of wannabe guy, and then you have the real elite who are like sort of scumbags.
Yeah.
And unlike in Saltburn, that guy is not a good dude. In this movie, Liam Neeson's Rob Roy character is a good dude,
Yeah.
but he does kind of win barely at the end. Like you think he's going to lose the whole time,
Hmm.
and then at the end, the last second, he like pulls a finishing blow and emerges victorious.
Hmm.
So I think it does have a commonality there in the story and the arc
Yeah.
to Saltburn.
Yeah. It's got that kind of twist or whatever.
Like you think you rich fucks think you can just fuck with, like you can meddle with us all the time, you know? Like we are the honorable ones. We believe
Yeah.
in honor. You rich fucks don't believe in honor. But in Saltburn, they kind of run with that, and then they end up lying to you and being like, "Oh, no, it's actually he was actually evil the whole time."
Yeah. He was the shittiest one, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the shittiest one by
He was
far.
worse
But in
than.
Rob Roy, it's more idealistic, and Rob Roy is like a hero, so he
Yeah.
he shows up the aristocracy
Hmm.
literally by hacking that guy's neck off, basically.
Damn. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and so the one film that I encourage you to watch, and I'm disappointed that you didn't watch, really,
Hmm.
is Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, like there's a lot of good French literature. Like you have Hunchback of Notre Dame, you have Three Musketeers, but that's like child's play. It's all adventure it's all over the place. It doesn't keep into the themes that you say in Les Mis
Yeah.
or even Barry Lyndon or Amadeus or Saltburn. It doesn't keep into those themes of like, you know, uh, of wealth versus sort of moderation and excess versus simplicity and sort of these themes of like talent versus uh, uh, falsity or whatever or like
Yeah.
fraudulence. These themes are kind of like virtue versus ignominy.
Hmm.
Though that doesn't exist as much in those adventure stories as it does in a story like uh,
Monte
The
Cristo.
Count of Monte
Yeah.
Cristo. Now, the problem with The Count of Monte Cristo is it's not immediately a film about virtue.
Hmm.
It starts out seeming like it could go in any direction. So I can tell why maybe you weren't um, drawn to it. You
Well,
didn't
I
want
mean,
to. You
I,
know,
I just don't know nothing about it, but I got no problem watching it.
well, how are we doing for time? Because we can still watch it and review it. I don't want to spoil it for you.
Yeah, we're at 57 minutes.
So, do you think The Count of Monte Cristo is a film that I should discuss, or do you think it's something we can forestall?
I think we should save it because we're basically at about an hour, and if I watch Monte Cristo, Rob Roy, The Draftsman, you know,
Yeah,
that's
there's
only
also The
three.
Duelists.
Yeah.
I'll discuss The Duelists because I don't think you'll watch that.
All right.
So, The Count of Monte Cristo. The one thing I'll say is that it's a film about two characters that have a rivalry,
Hmm.
and it's one of the best rivalry films ever. Uh, The Duelists is also about a rivalry, but it's a story that's sort of concocted, and it's based off a Joseph Conrad short story, and it's sort of morphed into something else. It's Ridley Scott's first directorial film. It's his debut, and it's pretty good. It has Harvey Keitel and Keith Carradine as Napoleonic officers. I believe they're both French, right?
Hmm.
And but they speak English, and
Yeah.
but like But the film is, for the when it was made in like the late 70s, 77, I think. It's got a pretty good costume. The film takes advantage. The photographer took advantage of like the limited opportunity to shoot in historical s- simulated environments, and it's a film that I'm impressed by because it doesn't seem like it had a high budget. I could be
Yeah.
wrong. Anyway, um, the whole film is basically them. There's one guy who's played by Harvey Keitel, who's a
Mm.
hothead, and he just wants to fight duels with everyone. And he kind of fucks with the wrong dude because Keith Carradine is a very ethical officer, and Keith Carradine is actually supposed to arrest him for fighting duels with people he shouldn't fight duels with. And then instead of him
Hmm.
submitting to being arrested, he challenges him to a duel.
That's
And
funny.
so Harvey Keitel he challenges him to a duel. He loses. He comes back and he's like stalking Keith Carradine, trying to get him into more duels. And I think they fight like 5 or 6 duels in total. And each one is a little different. By the end of the film, they're using guns, but they start out by just doing sword fighting for most duels, and for the majority of the fights. And there's a few like battles and stuff, but overall, the film is about them having this like 20-year rivalry where they have. And by the end of the movie, they're both generals, if you can believe that. And
Damn.
in fact, a little bit of a spoiler. Harvey Keitel's character is like is going to go to prison because he's like he was a Napoleon supporter, and then the royalists win at the end of the Napoleonic War,
Hmm.
and so they're trying to imprison him for being a supporter of Napoleon, I think. And Keith Carradine has to win the last duel with him. So he's like he finagles it so that guy doesn't go to prison just so he can fucking duel him, if you believe that.
Jeez.
Yeah, like he tells his superior general, the marshal, like, "Hey, like, he's a loser. Like, don't he's not gonna hurt anyone. Like, just don't throw him into,
The brig.
political
Yeah.
political exile or whatever."
Hmm.
And so he saves his ass from like lifetime imprisonment just so he can fight the last duel with him. It's a pretty intense film that way. Like the rivalry has no real like rationale to it.
Hmm.
Shaking about that, knowing that you could be thrusted into a rivalry for your entire life and not really understand why you're embroiled in it.
That's pretty great. I don't know, man. That sounds interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that yeah, it was a cool movie in its day, and now it's like kind of like a period interest film. But uh I like everything by Ridley Scott. I've been trying to do tier rankings on him a few times, and the audio doesn't work somewhat.
It's
So
obnoxious.
yeah, because I apparently I cover the microphone on my laptop or something.
Uh,
Um, at any rate, so about an hour? So, I mean,
yeah, we are. Hour
so I
10.
think for the next one we do, why not real quick watch Napoleon?
Sorry, you cut out. Watch Napoleon, you said?
Here, watch Napoleon and watch The Count of Monte Cristo, and we can compare
Wait, is
them
this
because
Napoleon by Ridley Scott?
yeah, it is, yeah.
I don't know. I want to watch that. I mean, have you watched it? Is it good?
I've seen it twice. It's pretty good. I saw my dad's birthday, and
All
I
right. Fuck,
yeah,
I'll do it.
with my dad, and for his birthday, I guess. Ridley Scott, it's not his like finest hour, this movie, but
Yeah.
it's still like a really good motion picture. I'd recommend it to virtually anyone.
Hmm.
It's more like a comedy at times than an actual like drama, like military.
Yeah.
I know, I know that we're supposed to talk about these like fanciful rivalries in this episode, but I think you can make the argument, perhaps, that the Count of Monte Cristo, the rivalry is sort of ridiculous.
Hmm.
And then you could also make the argument that the Napoleon, if there is a rivalry, it's with his wife and not with anyone else.
That's
And
strange.
in that movie, it's rather ridiculous as well.
Hmm.
So those are almost like verging on the fantasy realm.
Yeah.
Whereas the Duelist actually does have some credibility to it. I will say that much. It's a pretty naturalistic film.
Hmm.
So okay, so if you had to signal praise for any of these, which one would you say is the best motion
I
picture?
mean, I thought Barry Lyndon was the best. I just kept like being amazed by it, sort of, or just like being
Yeah,
impressed
it's
by it.
it's the most spectacular. It really
Yeah,
was a marvelous production.
it's just an amazing movie, and in many ways. With a second being Amadeus, which I want to watch again because I didn't get it all the first time. And Saltburn is really kind of it's just sort of tawdry. It's just like
That says
it's
it all, doesn't
yeah,
it?
it's just like a trashy, shitty movie. I
I liked it though because it really underscores how declined our culture is compared to the 1700s, right?
well, yeah, I guess. I mean, by contrast, I suppose it provides a counterweight, which makes the other movies look better in comparison. But that's hardly. I
It
don't know.
provides ballast to the ship we're on and tells us that, focusing on the 1700s is a good idea. 21st century is, we're basically done.
That's great. Yeah, that's
All
great.
right, well, we'll end there. I mean, and this is the Remembering Truth Cinephiles podcast. Obviously, this whole YouTube channel is about remembering truth, but
Mm,
I always like to encourage people at the end of these shows to remember joy because it's
wow.
probably more important anyway than truth.
Damn.
So
Nice.
if you can
Yeah.
remember joy, you're doing a lot better than me. I'll say that much.
Yeah. All right.
All right, Will, it's good to hear from you again. You're such a great friend. We'll
You
we'll
as well.
talk later, and hopefully we'll be talking about Napoleon and the Count of Monte Cristo.
Aye, we shall.